I'm Kate Mosse, and my latest book is a novella called The Winter Ghosts. It's set in 1928, and it's the story of a young man who is grieving for the death of his brother in the Great War and has never really got over it. And on one night in December 1928, he goes off the road in France and finds himself in a village and spends the night talking to a young woman, and in the morning she's vanished. So it's an old-fashioned ghost story for Christmas. It finishes on Christmas Eve, and it's very much in the tradition of M.R. James and Henry James and Algernon Blackwood. Those short, self-contained ghost stories that make a shiver run up your spine, but it all comes right in the end. Winter Ghosts is inspired, as all my fiction is, by the landscape of the southwest of France and the history of that part of France. So people who've read my earlier books, such as Labyrinth, will recognise that there's a certain amount of Cathar history. It's set in the mists and the mountains and the big skies and the caves of the Aude and the Ariège, very close to Andorra, and particularly in a town called Tarascon, which is a tiny mountain town, and it's one of those places that when you're driving through, you feel that you could just reach up and touch the clouds. And so it's not a Christmas story as such, but it's very much a ghost story that belongs in that place. It belongs in the cold and the snow and the ice of that part of France, and in those cold years after the end of the Great War. And it's the first time I've written a male first-person narrator, which has been fantastic. And it's also very much a book about male grief and how the young men who didn't fight in that particular war and the ones that were left behind were sort of that given really no help and no support, that they weren't allowed to grieve, really. So it's a sort of more thoughtful story than often I write. I write big adventure stories mostly. I think The Winter Ghost is absolutely a book for Christmas. It's on the one hand it's my readers who will enjoy a shorter story. They usually have to invest quite a lot of time in reading my books, and this one is much shorter. But also it's very much it's illustrated, it's beautifully designed, and it is that sense that sometimes we all like a really lovely book to keep, not just a paperback that you leave on the train for the next person who might read it. So it's for anybody who enjoys reading about war. It's anybody who enjoys reading about one character, one man taking you through a story, and anyone who's ever wanted a quick shiver down their spine for Christmas.